Shri Govinda Gopinath Maran Mohan Ju ki jai. Nitya Lila Pravishta Vishnupada Ashtatarashata Shishimar Bhakti Vedanta Vaman Gosai Maharaj ki jai. Nitya Lila Pravishta Vishnupada Ashtatarashata Shishimar Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nitya Lila Pravishta Vishnupada Ashtatarashata Shishimar Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Gosai Prabhupada ki jai. Sorry, let me just go back. Nityalila Pravishtam Vishnupad Ashtatarashata Shishimad Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Goswami Maharaj ki jai. Nityalila Pravishtam Vishnupad Ashtatarashata Shishimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada ki jai. Nityalila Pravishta Maha Bhagavat Srila Gaur Kishodas Babaji Maharaj ki jai. Nityalila Pravishta Srila Satchidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur ki jai. Nityalila Pravishta Vaishnav Sarvabhauma Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj ki jai. Shri Rupa Anuga Gauriya Guru Varga ki jai. Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Das Raghunath Sharda Goswami Prabhu ki jai. Shri Sarup Damodar Rai Ramanandari Shri Gaur Parshad Vrinda ki jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai. प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासरी गौर भक्त वृंद की जय. श्री क्षेत्र मंडल गौरमंडल ब्रजमंडल मथुरा वृंदावन धाम की जय. सर्व अभिष्ट प्रदत्त गिरिराज महाराज की जय. श्री राधा कुंड श्याम कुंड की जय. श्री यमुना देवी गंगा देवी की जय. श्री तुलसी महारानी वृंद देवी की जय. श्री भक्ति देवी की जय. श्री पूर्णमासी योगमाया की जय. श्री गोपेश्वर महादेव की जय. श्री हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जय. नित्यलीला प्रविष्ट ओम विष्णुपाद श्री श्रीमद श्री गौर गोविंद गोस्वामी Maharaj की जय. And tomorrow will be his Tirubhav Titi, so Tirubhav Titi Adivas ki jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Shri Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol. Hari Bol, everybody. Gargraj ji, Dandavat Pranam. Indira Mata ji, Pranams, Madhavi Didi, Hari Bol. So, since tomorrow is going to be such a big day, we're gonna, there's gonna be so much to read about Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada on his appearance day. I thought maybe today, the day before, we could read about Srila Gaur Govinda Goswami Maharaj. And last year, Vaijanti Mala Mataji, she just wrote it and I posted it on my Facebook page, but it didn't go anywhere else. Well, not that I know of. Maybe it went somewhere else, but I think the only place where it got posted publicly was just a Facebook post for me. So I thought it would be nice for it to have a proper place because it's such an extraordinary moment. Srila Gaur Govinda Goswami Maharaj is the last Harikatha that he spoke in this world, and her experience of that day when he entered Nitya Lila. So, I'm going to read that now, and then tomorrow we'll read about Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada. I think I'm also going to send this out I'm definitely going to send it out on the Gaudiya Kirtan mailing list. Sorry, I meant to say Vine of Devotion mailing list. All right. Final Darshan with Śrīmad Gaur Govinda Goswami Maharaj. A personal account told by Vaijanti Mala Dasi. 9 February 1996, Sri Dham Mayapur. I offer unlimited heartfelt pranams at the lotus feet of my beloved Gurudev, Om Vishnupad Shri Śrīmad Bhakti Vedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. By his causeless mercy, I am increasingly appreciating astonishing glories of Om Vishnupad Śrīmad Gour Govinda Mahārāja, to whom I also offer my innumerable heartfelt pranams. I offer pranam eternally to my ever well-wishers, Om Vishnupad Śrīmad Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada, to Om Vishnupad Śrīmad Bhakti Pragyan Keshava Gosvāmī Mahārāja, and to all pure Vaishnavas in the line of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada. I also offer my humble pranam to the respected Sannyasigan and to all Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis. I have been feeling for a while that I should share my final darshan with Srila Gour Govinda Mahārāja, and today, just days before his 25th Tirobhav Titi, I am inspired to actually do this. It is a personal account, more like a diary entry. I wrote of this experience on 14th February 1996, just days he left this world, but I never shared it because I never completed it to my satisfaction. This account is based on that. Before I begin, I want to beg forgiveness if I incorrectly depict any of the events in that final darshan. There were others in the room. I am simply sharing my own memory of it. In rereading my memoir of 14th February, I see there have been some slight inaccuracies in my recent narrations of Srila Gour Govinda Mahārāja's pastime of disappearance. One second, just checking. Haribol Bhavatarani Mataji and Ganga Mataji. Haribol. I met my beloved Gurudev in 1991, and in 1996, I received permission from him to attend the annual GBC meetings for Gurukul-related matters. I journeyed there with Chandrika Dasi, a disciple of Srila Prabhupada, and Shiksha disciple of my Gurudev and my dear friend. When we arrived in Mayapur, we stayed in the Long Building. February 9th of 1996 was the appearance day of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada, and that morning, Chandrika and I went to his samadhi. His mercy was palpable, and it was a powerful experience to sit before him and pray. Circumambulating Govardhan at Sri Chaitanya Mat was also deeply moving, and that happiness stayed with me for quite some time, although I do not remember specific prayer. We then took Achman of Radhakund and Shamakund and went to the Yoga Pit. It was a potent parikrama. Meetings were on the 4th floor of the Kanch building, and Srila Gour Govinda Mahārāja's room was also on the 4th floor. They arranged this especially for him, as he could not easily walk up and down the stairs. Chandrika had never met Srila Gour Govinda Mahārāja and really wanted to. It was our great fortune that he was in the same meetings we were. On that February 9, the meeting began at 10 a.m. Srila Gour Govinda Mahārāja's disciple helped him into the room. As he entered, he kindly smiled at us. I could not help but notice during the meeting that while some of the devotees present did not seem to be aware of Srila Gour Govinda Mahārāja's spiritual stature, whenever they turned to him to ask for his opinion, they respectfully folded their palms before addressing him. They did not do that with anyone else. He had been a controversial person, famous for fearlessly saying with irrefutable evidence from Srila Prabhupada's books and other shastras that it is not possible for the jiva to fall from Vaikuntha. He emphasized again and again the importance of pure sadhu sangha and of accepting a pure guru, one that is fully conversant with shastra, realized in the absolute truth, and totally devoid of material attachment. Śrīmad Bhagavatam 11.3.21. Like any bona fide representative of the truth, He never hesitated to speak the truth, caring not if it resulted in his being bereft of followers, position, or wealth. In this way, by his single-pointed attachment to Krishna and his utter detachment from anything material, he was a true shelter for all. So, on the afternoon of February 9, Chandrika woke me from a rest. Vaijanti, we're going back to Vrindavan tomorrow. Could you buy bread rolls for the trip? I went to the restaurant, which then was just inside the main entrance, and purchased the prasad. But just as I was leaving, Chandrika and Bhakta Rup Prabhu arrived to tell me that again plans had changed, and we would now be leaving a day later. Chandrika excitedly told me that Rup Prabhu was going to try to arrange for us to meet with Srila Gour Govinda Mahārāja that evening. Chandrika, do you have a question for Mahārāja? I asked her. We can't visit such a sadhu without asking him a question. She said she would write some down. I returned to our room with the bread rolls. I can't remember where Chandrika went. She later popped in to tell me that Srila Mahārāja had agreed to see us and to come now. I joined her on the ground floor of the conch building. Chandrika has largest handwriting, and she had written pages of questions. We read over them together and considered which one we thought he would like the most. We numbered which to ask first, second, third. I think we selected 4 questions. We walked up the 4 flights of stairs. It was dusk. About 10 to 15 devotees stood along the railing of the balcony outside the room. My first thought was, oh, it's going to be a group darshan. But those devotees did not come inside. It was just Chandrika, Bhakti Rup Prabhu, and me. A servant and 4 other disciples sat behind one of the 2 beds in the room. They did not speak the entire time. Srila Gour Govinda Mahārāja cross-legged on the other bed. The mood in the room was peaceful and soft, a stark contrast to the mood of efficiency that pervaded the building at that time. Devotees from around the world convened to discuss the society's matters, and computer screens were seen glowing in every room. In this room, however, a different energy permeated. It glowed saffron. It was very soft and gentle, and computers were conspicuous by their absence. We offered our obeisances to Srila Gour Govinda Mahārāja and sat before him. Bhakta Rup Prabhu. Mahārāja, this is Chandrika Dasi, our god sister. She has always wanted to meet you, and this is Vaijanti Mala Dasi from Australia, Prabhu's wife. They are teachers in the Vrindavan Gurukul. I had met Srila on his first visit to Australia in 1990. I was not qualified to be aware of his glories then, but that did not stop him from bestowing great mercy upon my husband and me, my husband directly and me indirectly. But that is another story. Chandrika said that she was happy to be able to meet him and had been waiting to do so for many years. I asked, Mahārāja, I have been in Vrindavan for 5 years, but in that time you have not come there. Will you come? Srila Gour Govinda Mahārāja explained an operation on his foot, and because of that, he had to use a commode. He said that the bathrooms in the Vrindavan guest house were not suitable. He then picked up his foot and showed us the scar from the operation on its sole. I can only think that by this he bestowed more mercy upon us than we will ever be able to understand. Aren't your disciples building you a house? I asked. Manju Bhasini and her husband? Nodding gently, he said, Krishnananda. Chandrika then asked him her first question. How can we relate the intensity of separation Krishna felt in Dwarka to the intensity of separation Mahaprabhu felt in the Gambhira? Srila Gaur Govinda Maharaj proceeded to tell us about Krishna's feelings of separation from Vraj while he was in Dwarka, and he became lost in that pastime. How, while lying on his bed, Krishna would cry, Radhe, 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 Gopi, 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 Gopi. Srila Gaur Govinda Maharaj loudly called out these names, which really amazed me. My Gurudev, Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Gosvāmī Maharaj, was very focused on clarifying the highest goal of the Gaudiya Sampradaya, to become a maidservant at the lotus feet of Srimati Radharani. Some thought this inappropriate, and there was a chorus of objection by those who were not aware that everything he said was based on Shastra. So much also could be found in Srila Prabhupada's books. He never presented the pastimes of Sri Radha Krishna cheaply. He was simply pointing the way. Due to some misconceptions about his preaching, however, the very word gopi had become quite controversial. Most would certainly not cry it out amidst the GBC meetings. But Srila Gaur Govinda Maharaj calling it out loudly, which conveyed his absorption. It was not an act of defiance, but a glimpse of what was dear to his heart. I had learned from Srila Gurudev that a Vaishnava is the same inside and out. He is simple. The concept of duplicity is totally foreign to him. So Srila Gaur Govinda Maharaj's rendition of this pastime was like that. It was obvious that these talks were simply his life. For the most part, though, he spoke very softly, and at the same time was so animated. He talked of Rohini speaking Vraj pastimes to the inhabitants of Dwarka, and how Subhadra guarded the door. He acted out Krishna's, Baladev's, and Subhadra's ecstatic manifestations a few times, their arms contracting, their eyes getting larger and wider. He was clearly deeply absorbed. Bhakta Rupa Prabhu sat before him, eyes wide and with a big smile on his face. Time and again, Srila Gaur Govinda Maharaj would look at him with much affection. Srila Gaur Govinda Maharaj sent servants to bring him something, and a large bundle of granthas wrapped in a saffron cloth was placed before him on the bed. Again, I was touched by a wave of softness. Shastra was so dear to his heart that certain books went where he went. It struck me as so simple and pure. He selected a notebook from the pile. He selected a notebook from the pile. I think there's supposed to be an and there. Yeah. He selected a notebook from the pile and proceeded to read a pastime that he had copied into it. It was of Krishna leaving Dwarka, staggering out of his palace to ascend his chariot, swaying back and forth, his eyes rolling. Chandrika whispered to me, "You've seen it." Several months before, I had attended my first Puri Ratha Yatra and had become charmed by the scene being described. Occasionally, Srila Maharaj would become quiet and half close the book as if to conclude. But then, Chandrika's eager, "What happened next?" and his own obvious love for the pastime inspired him to continue. This happened a few times. He would then reopen the book and speak more of the confidential reason for Ratha Yatra. Later, one of the 4 devotees sitting behind the other bed told me that he had heard Srila Maharaj tell that pastime several times, but never had he heard him tell it in the way that he did that night. Srila Maharaj intertwined Leela and Tattva as he softly and animatedly spoke, regularly looking at us and asking the question he, a perfect teacher, was well known for asking. Do you understand? It was enthralling, but my lower back was giving me much pain. It was almost distracting. I knew that if I could rest my elbow at the very end of the other bed, the one parallel to his, it would relieve the pressure. I thought, if this were my Gurudev, he would not mind, as he would know that I intend no disrespect. But I did not know Srila Gaur Govinda Maharaj so well, and I knew that he appreciated the observance of proper etiquette. I did not want to transgress that before him. But the mood was so extremely soft and sweet, and everything felt so natural that I decided to take a chance, keeping my eyes keenly on him as my elbow slowly found a resting place at the very end of the other bed. I thought if I saw him flinch ever so slightly or frown, raise an eyebrow, or look displeased, I would immediately remove my elbow. But he seemed to not notice at all, not even slightly. I am not satisfied, by the way, with how I tell this pastime, which shows the most esoteric conception of Ratha Yatra. But I don't want to pretend that I remember more than I do. Nor do I want to copy and paste snippets from the versions published and distributed widely by his disciples, who heard him narrate it several times. The first time I heard this Leela was on that evening of February 9th, and I will share what I honestly remember and/or wrote in my notes. Eventually, Srila Maharaj narrated how the 3 chariots arrived in Vrindavan. Again, he closed the book. Chandrika, who had been eagerly hanging on to every word, Chandrika, who had been eagerly hanging on every word, asked, "But Maharaj, did Krishna enter Vrindavan? What happened next?" Srila Maharaj smiled, happy with this question, and proceeded to describe Krishna's entering Nidhuvan and how Śrīmad was lying there in intense separation. The only way her gopi friends could tell that she was alive was by holding a cotton swab under her nose and seeing the thin threads of cotton move. Lalita went to her and whispered in her ear, "Krishna has come." And Vishaka went to bring Krishna, who had become stunned as he stood outside the kunj. And then, Srila Maharaj said, there was eye-to-eye union. I had noticed that Srila Maharaj was making a wheezing sound as he breathed. It was like when someone has asthma. His servant had turned the fan on, and I felt a bit cross with him, thinking the fan was the cause of Maharaj's discomfort. I had no idea that it was Maharaj's absorption in the pastime that was manifesting in this way. Chandrika did not notice his breathing, but she did notice tears in Maharaj's eyes. I did not. I then asked, "But Maharaj, why Puri? This is a Vrindavan Dwarka pastime. Why Puri?" He began to answer, but would have only spoken for about 30 to 40 seconds. My eternal regret is that I cannot remember what he said. He then folded his palms, looked at us softly, and said, "I am very sorry, I cannot speak." A commanding silence pervaded the room, that beautiful room with flowers and an altar between the 2 beds. And I knew that this time we really had to leave. We thanked him, offered a respectful pranam, and left. Bhakta Rup Prabhu came out with us, and we walked down the stairs. Chandrika commented that it seemed that Srila Mahārāja was experiencing deep feelings of separation. As we came to the lunch building, two men, which I have just come to learn were Gokuldas Prabhu from Australia and Rasikananda Prabhu, whom I don't know, hurriedly came down the stairs and flew past us. One of them I've recently found out was Gokul Prabhu. Oh, that was already written. Let me just, okay. Mahārāja needs a doctor, one of them said as they ran off. I was bewildered and wondered what on earth could have made Mahārāja so ill so quickly. I never imagined he was leaving this world. It was moving too fast and seemed surreal. But we were only just talking to him, I thought. They are disciples, so their extreme concern is natural. I'm sure he will be fine. I sat down on the stone seats in the quadrangle outside the temple and talked with Australian Tara, who was in Mayapur at that time. After about 10 minutes, two girls that I did not know came over to us and informed us that Srila Gour Govinda Mahārāja had just left this world. I ran over to Chandrika, who was talking with some other people, and told her. Without waiting a second, we flew up the stairs. The closer we came to the 4th floor, the louder we heard the unified voices chanting the Maha Mantra in Srila Prabhupada's Tomskin tune. Many devotees had gathered outside the room. Entrance was only given to sannyasis, GBCs, and other senior devotees, although some male disciples of Srila Mahārāja were also there at his side. We were in total disbelief. As I said, it seemed surreal. I don't use that word lightly, but no other word describes how I felt. I saw Bhaktarup Prabhu inside the room, sitting cross-legged on the floor at the other bed, his face down and palms folded in prayer. Chandrika and I asked Aniruddha Prabhu from Melbourne to call Bhaktarup Prabhu outside. I don't know what is happening, he said. Just pray. And he returned to his position on the floor. Srila Mahārāja's servant saw us outside the room and expressed some intense anger at Chandrika. I suggested that she immediately return to her room in the long building, which she did. Concerned she was safe, I soon returned also to find her weeping. We were in shock and tried to recall everything about the darshan. Chandrika wrote many notes, which we now cannot trace. After a few hours of hearing the continuous chanting coming from the top of the conch building, we decided to go there again, thinking that if we didn't, we would never really believe what had happened. This time, we were able to go inside. Srila Gour Govinda Mahārāja had been placed in a sitting position. He was bedecked with many, many garlands. Male disciples were massaging his legs, and female disciples were putting their head at his feet. He looked incredibly beautiful, and an indescribable auspiciousness pervaded the room, which had a tangible effect on my heart. After 20 minutes, someone asked the male disciples to remain in the room and the ladies to leave. We went downstairs and waited in the lobby. I will never forget the sight of Srila Mahārāja on a Vyasasan appearing at the top of the last stretch of stairs. His skin glowed pinkish and looked like porcelain. His beauty was breathtaking. Even though it was now late evening, hundreds of devotees were present, waiting to offer him obeisances. He was taken to Srila Prabhupada's Samadhi and placed before his beloved Gurudev. A devotee sang, Ohe Vaishnav Thakur, and Srila Gour Govinda Swami Patita Pavana. After doing parikrama of Srila Prabhupada 3 times, The procession went to Srila Prabhupada's Bhajan Kutir for darshan of Shri Shri Gour Nitai, and then to the main mandir for darshan of Srila Prabhupada and Sri Nrsingadev. Finally, Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj was placed on the platform before Sri Radha Madhav. The conch blew, the bell rang, and at 11 p.m. or so, hundreds of devotees were singing Govindam prayers. Someone led Shri Gurvashtakam Someone led Shri Gurvashtakam as senior Vaishnavas offered Srila Maharaj flowers, gently sprayed him with scented water, and placed Sri Madhav's massive garland upon him. Shripad Jayapataka Maharaj offered him arti, and the devotees sang his pranam mantra. But then, just as we were so absorbed, Mayapur Chandra Prabhu drew our attention by bursting into the temple room and running onto the stage, trying to get the attention of the senior devotees. Jayapataka Maharaj turned and walked with him off the stage. We heard sirens. "Close the doors," someone cried. "It's a raid." Shripad Lokanath Maharaj told the women to stay behind Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj, who was taken off the stage and around the deities in parikrama. Chandrika and I linked arms and did as we were told. Somehow or other, in that crowd of people, we got to walk directly behind Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj's Vyasasan. This is a clear picture in my mind. Srila Maharaj was carried out of the temple room, but for some inexplicable reason, Chandrika and I did not go to the car, but stayed inside. Śrīmad Purijan Prabhu was also in the temple. We could hear gunshots. The temple doors were locked, and the three of us and one or two pujaris were the only ones inside. We had known that the land raid was not serious, and actually thought this may be our own final minutes. Later, we found out that the gunshots we heard were by devotees scaring off the attackers, who just had sticks. When we finally unlatched the temple doors and came outside, we saw many devotees. Everything seemed normal, a complete contrast to what we had thought was going on from inside the temple room. When Chandrika and I came out of the temple, Srila Maharaj's car was still there. By Srila Maharaj's transcendental kindness, we were able to offer him pranam a mere few minutes before the car drove off, bringing to a perfect conclusion for us, his mercifully including us in this pastime. When we returned to Vrindavan, I asked for darshan of my Srila Gurudev in Mathura. I walked into the room to see someone talking with him about Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj. Vaijanti was there, she told him, and turned to me with such sobriety and said, let me read that. Vaijanti Mala was there, she told him. He turned to me with such sobriety and said, "What happened?" As I narrated the events, he listened very intently. I am shy to say that he gave me his undivided attention, because it should be the other way around, but I trust the respected devotees will know what I mean. When I had finished describing the events of that day, he said, "He was a highly qualified, pure Vaishnav. He had affection for me also." I commented that I think some of Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj's disciples would come to him now, and he nodded slowly, not saying any more. It takes time to assimilate such events, and honestly, I don't know if I have ever actually done so. The day had started powerfully with an extraordinary darshan of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. The effect of that darshan stayed with me throughout the day, fortunately. We do not understand the mercy we received from Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj, but we certainly know It was sweet, abundant, and causeless. And although I am ever grateful, I know that I can never be grateful enough. All glories to Om Vishnupad Srila Gour Govinda Gosvāmī Mahārāja. He not only understood and imparted the deepest import of Srila Prabhupada's teachings, but embodied them and expertly guided others into them. I have learned from Srila Gurudev and our acharyas that a bona fide guru has no guru abhiman, no conception of oneself as guru. Rather, he is exclusively fixed in the abhiman of being a disciple. This is more than extremely rare in this world, and this was Srila Gour Govinda Mahārāja. Our greatest fortune is to associate with such persons, hear from them, and possibly serve them in any way in the hope of receiving their merciful glance, which makes bhakti blossom in the heart. Thank you. Aspiring to serve Sri Guru and the Vaishnavas, Vaijanti Maladasi, March 2nd, 2021. Srila Gour Govinda Gosvāmī Mahārāja ki jai. Haribol, everybody. Sudevi Didi, Ladini Shakti Didi, and Yashji. Hare Krishna. So I'm going to end our reading a little early today because there's a lot of postings to do and different things. I have a busy day today. So, but thank you so much for joining in this reading. And if you would like to receive this, I'm going to send it out on the vineofdevotion.com, that website. So if you want to share it with anybody, or you want to reread it yourself, or you just want to have it, you can go there. It should be there, I think, pretty soon. All right. We'll end with a little Maha Mantra. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Jai Shishi Guru Gauranga Gandharvika Giridhari Shishi Radha Vinod Bihari Ju Ki Jai. Shri Govinda Gopinath Maran Mohan Ju Ki Jai. Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Vishnupad Ashtotara Shata Shishimar Bhakti Vedanta Narayan Gosvāmī Mahārāja Srila Gurudev Ki Jai. Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Vishnupad Ashtotara Shata Shishimar Srila Bhakti Vedanta Vaman Gosvāmī Mahārāja Ki Jai. Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Vishnupad Ashtotara Shata Shishimar Bhakti Siddhanta Bhakti Vedanta Swami Mahārāja Śrīla Prabhupada ki jai. Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Vishnupada Ashtatarashata Śrīmad Bhakti Pragyan Keshava Gosvāmī Mahārāja ki jai. Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Vishnupada Ashtatarashata Śrīmad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Gosvāmī Prabhupada ki jai. Nitya Lila Pravishta Mahabhagavat Śrīla Gour Kishore Das Babaji Mahārāja ki jai. Nitya Lila Pravishta Śrīla Satchidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur ki jai. Nitya Lila Pravishta Vaishnav Sarvabhauma Śrīla Jagannath Das Babaji Mahārāja ki jai. Shri Rupa Anuga Guru Varga ki jai. Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dashagunath Sharda Goswami Prabhu ki jai. Shri Swarup Damodar Rai Ramanandari Shri Gour Parshad Vrinda ki jai. Namacharya Śrīla Haridas Thakur ki jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Shri Kshetra Mandala Gaura Mandala Braja Mandala Mathura Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Sarva Abhishta Pradata Giriraj Maharaj ki jai. Shri Radha Kunda Shama Kund ki jai. Shri Amuna Devi Ganga Devi ki jai. Shri Tulsi Maharani Vrinda Devi ki jai. Shri Bhakti Devi ki jai. Shri Purnamasi Yogamaya ki jai. Shri Gopeshwar Mahadev ki jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai. Nitya Lila Pravishta Śrīmad Śrīla Gour Govinda Gosvāmī Mahārāja ki jai. Tadiya Tirubhav Titi Adivas ki jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda ki jai. Samagata Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Shri Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Vo. Vrindai Tulsi Devai Priyai Keshavashacha Krishna Bhakti Padadevi Satyavatai Namo Namaha Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Dandavat Pranams everybody. So I'll see you all tomorrow to read the glories of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada. Maybe we could read something by him. I don't have anything planned yet, so if you have something that you especially want me to read, let me know. Maybe we could read it. All right. Jai Shri Radhe Hari Bol.